any of us ever know what it is to become the perfect version of ourselves.
This is Decoding Superhuman with your host, Boomer Anderson.
Why, hello, superhumans. It's Boomer here, bringing you another episode of the Decoding Superhuman podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And today, we're going to delve a little bit into the technology. Actually, I think this is one of the first episodes I've done with a specific inventor of a technology. My guest today is Sebastian Wasowski of Vasper. He's the co-founder of Vasper, and that's Vasper. You can find them at vasper.com. Now, what is Vasper exactly? Because it's probably a question that's on your mind. Well, Vasper is it's a machine that I had the chance to play with in Austin, Texas at PaleoFX. It combines three scientifically proven principles: compression technology, cooling, as well as interval training, all together in one machine. I've described it as a recumbent bike meets elliptical meets cold thermogenesis or thermogenesis, depending on how you want to pronounce that. But I had a lot of fun on it, so I wanted to have Sebastian on the show to explain his technology and explain the benefits to you. So today we get into a little bit about how Vasper really came to be, how it combines those scientifically proven principles, how a typical workout works on Vasper, what's the significance of 21 minutes, and what are some of the key health benefits that you get from Vasper. Sebastian's seen a lot of really cool outcomes, especially with pro sports teams, the elderly, and a number of other different areas. I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy learning about the technology, and you can check out the show notes at decodingsuperhuman.com/Vasper, Vasper, where we'll link to Vasper's website and how you can find one to try for yourself. Enjoy the show. All right, so I met my guest today at PaleoFX, and I was having one of those days. And, Sebastian, I'm sure you can relate to this, but I was having one of those days where I just had a lot going on, as everybody did at PaleoFX. I was meeting all these new people, and I was completely worried that I just wasn't going to make my workout. And then I ran into you. And, Sebastian, I want to welcome you to the show, but also thank you for allowing me to get an extremely efficient workout in the middle of PaleoFX. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Boomer, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you in Austin, and so glad that you could get in a solid workout that day.
It was great. And I think it was at one point we had Ben Greenfield on there, and you had, I think, Mark Sisson sort of coaching him at one point. So it seemed like quite the popular attraction. But I guess for people who are unfamiliar with the Vasper, the show notes will be found at decodingsuperhuman.com/Vasper. That's Vasper. And so, Sebastian, I describe it as sort of the recumbent bike meets the assault bike meets the elliptical meets ice and steroids and all these kind of things. But that's probably not a great description for people. Do you mind describing what the Vasper exactly is?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Vasper is actually a complete system of exercise that is designed to stimulate your body's production of anabolic hormones, things like growth hormone, testosterone, DHEA, IGF-1, etc. When we work out at a very high intensity, our bodies and brains produce these hormones, and that's arguably the single greatest benefit of working out, the single greatest benefit of exercise. Vasper is a means of initiating that benefit, but through a much lower threshold than is normally involved. So basically, through a low-impact 21-minute protocol, the user is able to mimic the physiology of even an intensive 2-hour workout, get the same response from their pituitary and the endocrine system without the same wear, tear, time, and effort normally involved in initiating that anabolic response from exercise.
All right. So that helps frame exactly what the Vasper does. So thank you. And we'll get into a little bit of the different elements of the Vasper because I like how it combines cold with restriction, blood flow restriction, etc. But for something like this to develop, How you mentioned that you're obviously co-founder. Your father did this for his own health, or
Yeah.
at least that was one of the stories that you shared with me. Do you mind going into that story just a little bit?
No, not at all. So we moved from the Bay Area to the Big Island of Hawaii when I was 13 years old. And not long after we went there, some of my dad's health concerns were actually made worse in the tropical climate. So he had traumatic arthritis in his ankles from a series of motorcycle accidents when he was younger. And then he was also pre-diabetic. He was actually flunking his glucose tolerance tests. So as these issues started to become more serious, he started doing research on ways that he could essentially avoid, having to take drugs for the rest of his life, and how he could actually address the root cause of the problems that he was facing. And he stumbled upon the science behind blood flow restriction and exercise, stumbled upon the science of cooling, and had the idea to combine this into a single system of exercise. So he had a little lab in the backyard and put together a working prototype with somebody that he met in line at Costco who worked in refrigeration. And the whole company story is actually full of these serendipitous events and meetings and interactions that sort of organically took us to the next phase. But he developed a prototype in the backyard, completely cured his arthritis, which was really severe in the ankles. He had a hard time walking sometimes, and actually couldn't walk sometimes because of how severe the pain was no longer flunking his glucose tolerance test, was no longer pre-diabetic, lost some weight, mobility, all these things started to improve for him in very rapid succession. And then it got to the point where we had probably 12 to 15 different friends and neighbors who were showing up on a regular basis to get their sessions in with amazing things to report, amazing benefits to report. And it was at that point where sort of realized, there's something big happening here, and there's a tremendous application and opportunity to help, millions of people with this technology.
All right, before we go into the science and some of these typical workouts, because I know there was a variety of different workout selections, but
Yeah.
sort of similar principles, but uh, different use cases that you guys have had so far, because some of the research that you sent me involves a lot of sort of cardiac rehab, which is interesting. But also you work with sports teams too.
Yeah,
Do you mind going into some of the successes and use cases you've had so far?
definitely. We are a little bit all over the map with regards to people using Vasper and people benefiting from it. Essentially, if you can benefit from exercise and you can benefit from movement, you can do so more efficiently, more powerfully with Vasper in conjunction with whatever that therapy or strength training regime may be. So it is particularly powerful for anybody who lacks the physical capacity to engage in high intensity exercise. For any reason, whether it be simply aging, condition, illness, injury, for anybody that can't engage in high intensity exercise, they are missing out on the most significant benefits of exercise, because it's only through high intensity that we really initiate that downstream metabolic effect. So for many of these people, Vasper is truly the only platform that enables them the capacity to mimic the physiology of this more intensive workout and drive benefits that would be entirely out of reach otherwise. So on one end of the spectrum, we're in cardiac rehab, physical therapy, geriatrics. There is a rapidly growing number of medical professionals and medical institutions who have incorporated Vasper into their practice, into their offering, and they're seeing outstanding results across a bunch of different rehabilitation verticals. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're with, SOCOM, special forces, professional athletes, human performance companies, professional sports teams, and in between, everybody. The general health and wellness market is coming to our facility, is coming to other health and wellness businesses that have purchased Vasper and are now, offering it in their community.
Sebastian, this is really cool. It has broad applications everywhere, and you're obviously working with some sports teams right now.
Yeah.
I saw in your video you had the Texas Rangers, you had the San Jose Sharks. I wish you would work with the Chicago Bears because they need a lot of help. But do you see sort of anything that the Vasper can't do?
If you can benefit from exercise, if you can benefit from movement, which I'd say is 99.9% of our human population, then you're our client. You can benefit from Vasper. So that's really the beauty of it. That's the amazing thing, is that through this low impact protocol, we're able to stimulate some of the most significant benefits of intensive exercise. And that has applications whether you're a cardiac rehab patient or you're a professional athlete, as well as everybody in between.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about how this works,
Sure.
because not just the machine itself, but really within our own physiology.
Sure.
Because just to put people in the seat that I was in,
Mhm.
quite literally, you're strapping cold. I would guess call them almost like ice packs, but if you call them something else, please correct me. You're like cold flowing water around my arms, which is restricting blood flow,
Yeah.
right? And as well as around my legs.
Yeah.
Do you mind just walking through exactly why that is important and how really that concentrates, well, I guess concentrates the lactic acid and what that leads to?
Definitely. So there's two main elements that are in play in our system, and one is the compression, the vascular compression, and the second is the cooling. And the fact that we have those two combined, and there's a tremendous amount of synergy between those two elements, that's really what separates us from any other blood flow restriction technology that's on the market right now. So basically, you sit down in a recumbent elliptical. That's one of the first products that we have. And everything is cooled, actually. The entirety of the seat that you're sitting on, the foot plates, as well as the cuffs that go around the quads and biceps, have cold water flowing through it. It's about 45 degrees in temperature. So it's almost like a dry cold plunge as you're sitting there, especially as you're waiting for the cuffs to come to pressure. So while everything's cold, the pressure is only applied to the quads and to the biceps. And it's almost like a blood pressure cuff filling up with, instead of air, very, very cold water. Again, it's about 40, 45 degrees in temperature. And this pressure is created through the liquid, and it's consistent on the limbs throughout a 21-minute interval-based workout. So generally you warm up for a 5 to 9 minute warm-up period, and then you do a series of sprint intervals afterwards, the whole time with the compression consistently applied to the quads and to the biceps. And what the compression does is actually reduces the superficial blood flow, which results in a rapid high concentration of lactic acid as well as other metabolites within the muscle. The strength of that concentration is the signal that your brain receives to restore the muscle to the pre-exercise state. So what we're essentially doing is mimicking the physiology of a much more intensive workout, driving the same anabolic response from the brain, from the body, but doing so through a safe and contained low impact 21-minute protocol. So almost regardless of age or condition, it's an opportunity to optimize your overall hormone profile and do so very safely through the protocol and through the technology as it's established.
If I have this right, you're basically taking an hour long, for lack of a better categorization, hit workout, and you're condensing it into 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I'm not sweating too much, which is very different for me.
Yeah. And that's where the cold really comes into play. So we're not only reducing the blood flow, we're doing it with cold compression. And what the cooling does is, one, it helps mitigate the discomfort of rapidly concentrating lactate in the muscle. It's an interesting experience because the burn that you normally feel towards the tail end of a workout, you start to experience that burn within the first 3-4 minutes, but without being out of breath, without being overheated. So it's really a strange sensation, because through a low level of exertion, all of a sudden the sensation in your quads is as if you've been working out for an hour or you're riding your bike straight up a mountain. But again, you're not sweating, you're not panting, you're able to have a conversation at this point in the protocol for sure. And then that burn remains fairly constant throughout the 21-minute protocol. Another way to think about what we're doing here is in regular exercise, in normal exercise without any BFR, the lactate that's produced is constantly swept away by the venous system, by your blood. So as a result of that, it takes a considerable amount of very significant time and effort in order to create a concentration strong enough that'll actually trigger the body's production of anabolic hormones. And some people, for any reason or physical limitation, are simply unable to create that physiology and drive that benefit. But whether you're a professional athlete, being able to initiate that benefit through a safe and contained low impact protocol is optimizing your hormone profile for more significant gains from the work that you're putting in outside of Vasper, a greatly enhanced recovery, as well as better performance, and in the same way that steroids might help you in all three categories, this is tapping into your body's endogenous production of those same agents and optimizing the ratio between anabolic hormones and cortisol, specifically nighttime cortisol, is what we've consistently seen drop at a very, very significant level. So one of the most common and immediate benefits that people report using our system is dramatic improvements to the quality of sleep.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because as soon as you said nighttime cortisol goes down, I'm imagining that almost any person with a job, really, but any sort of stressed out person that has trying to balance that job and family, it's quite applicable, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody these days, for the most part, is stressed out, and everybody has at least periods of the week or the month where their cortisol level could be lower, especially at night. So we need the optimal amount of cortisol in order to maintain blood pressure, in order to get up in the morning and be able to proceed with our day. But when it's chronically elevated, and especially later in the day and in the nighttime, that's when it correlates to a whole bunch of negative things in the body, including weight gain, visceral weight gain, belly fat, inflammation, and poor sleep. And once your sleep cycle is compromised, there's so much else that can really kind of fall down after that. So quality of sleep is absolutely paramount to every aspect of being a healthy and happy human being.
So I guess then second question there is the ideal time to use the Vasper night? Or, I mean, are you seeing these same effects with people using it earlier in the day? I imagine so, but I have to ask.
I personally, I think the earlier you do it in the day, the better, but it almost doesn't matter. We have athletes that come in the late afternoon, after training, and they use it to kind of sum up their workout and optimize their physiology to recover, as well as see more significant gains. But in general, all the evidence for exercise having a positive impact on sleep quality, the earlier in the day that you do that exercise, generally the more impactful it is to quality of sleep. And specifically anaerobic exercise has the greatest impact on quality of sleep. And Vasper is essentially just a concentrated dose of high intensity anaerobic fitness, but is available to everybody. We have clients as old as 96 years old using this on a regular basis, cardiac rehab patients, physical therapy patients. There was a paper published out of UCSF in San Francisco in their physical therapy department about Vasper's success with Parkinson's patients even. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a range of, the different applications and the different demographics who are benefiting from the technology. And again, the other end of the spectrum is NASA astronauts, Navy SEALs, professional athletes, performance organizations, companies like Exos, and then everybody in between.
This is so cool. I love it. Now, so you mentioned that Vasper in athletes and some of the videos that you sent over, which again, I'll link to in the show notes, were mentioning that these athletes would use Vasper and then go off and do like a 100-meter sprint in the swimming pool. If you were just sort of a regular everyday person, would you recommend Vasper as more of a supplement to current training, or could you get away with just using Vasper if you're just, say, like a regular 35 to 45-year-old male or female?
We do have a number of people for whom Vasper is their primary form of exercise. The exciting thing about them is they typically don't really enjoy exercise. They don't have much of a background in exercise or having regular workouts throughout their life. But in many cases, they'll start using Vasper, and because it's such a manageable thing to fit into your schedule, it's a 21 minutes of active work. You lay down on the cooling table for about 5-10 minutes. The whole process is about half an hour. And if you can come 3 times per week, there's an incredible cumulative benefit that people start to see. And in many cases, people who have not been exercising or never had a regular relationship to exercise and movement will start the Vasper program And then within a matter of 20 sessions, they find themselves actually wanting to do other physical activity based on how good they feel and how the place that their body is in all of a sudden on account of utilizing the technology even only 3 times per week. There are a number of really, really busy entrepreneurs and professionals who own these in their home, for whom it's their primary form of exercise. And sometimes, all I have time for is half an hour this morning, and they'll jump on, they'll have a harder protocol and be well set for the day and have, put in their great workout. And then you can just make adjustments as you have availability for other physical activity. You might dial it back on the Vasper with respect to the intensity. But Vasper is really promoting an optimal physiology for, better performance, for more significant gains, and a greatly enhanced recovery. So it is a perfect complement to any existing physical therapy or any existing physical training, I should say, as well as any existing therapy regime.
All right. So a couple of things you said there that I want to just, if you don't mind, I'm going to double click on that one. 21 minutes. What's the significance of the 21 minutes? Because I tend to be an exercise addict when I have time, and could I go for longer? I know in my personal experience with your machine, I may not have made it longer, but that's okay. What is the significance of the 21 minutes?
So 21 minutes based on the existing research is really sort of like the minimal effective dose to get the maximum benefit. That because we're actually reducing blood flow and you're exercising with compression, you don't want to go longer than 20 minutes. So you can use Vasper as a warm-up and then go directly into other exercise. And that's how a lot of athletes actually prefer to use the system. But because we're reducing the blood flow, in conjunction with a 21-minute dynamic interval-based workout, you don't want to sustain that for longer than 21 minutes. So there is some research to show that in 20 minutes of the right dose of exercise is actually when you have the maximum anabolic response with the no cortisol increase, basically. And that's the issue with overtraining, and that's something that many people are experiencing on a very persistent and chronic level, is they're training to the point where they're also increasing stress hormones in the body, and they're having chronically elevated cortisol levels, which in many cases can lead to poor sleep, inflammation in the body, and people not being able to lose weight, burnout. Their adrenals are totally trashed as a result. So you'd be amazed at how many people just consistently overdo it and have a more is better mentality with exercise, and they're not really dialed in and understanding what they're putting their body through and the price that they're paying to work out that hard.
And the cooling mat, is that just to bring you back to normal so that you can go off and kick ass in the real world?
It is, yeah. The cool down is basically designed to be a transition between the workout and the rest of your day. And whenever I'm describing it to people, I always ask them, hey, have you ever been to a yoga class? And 98% of people say yes. And then I say, well, at the end of yoga, you lay there in Savasana. You're on your back, and it acts as a transition between the practice and the rest of your day. We're essentially doing the exact same thing, except we're doing it on a cooling mat again. So you're laying on a cooling mat, your legs are a little bit elevated, so there's that nice low back contact with the mat. And we want to allow the user's breathing and heart to come to its resting rate, to its baseline, and really send that hard stop signal to the body, to the brain. The workout is over, the intensity is over, and that can sort of help coax along that downstream metabolic effect and let the body know that it's transitioned into a different phase.
It's brilliant. It's the complete experience all built into 30 minutes. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm actually struggling with something to come up with next, because this is awesome, man. You guys are in the US predominantly, you're in California, but how can people get access to try the machine? I saw you at Paleo FX. I was fortunate enough to meet you there and have conversations. But for others, how would they get in touch with you?
So we are getting out there on the road a lot more these days. I don't know exactly what the next conference we're going to be at, but there's definitely more on the calendar. But if you go to Vasper.com, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a locations page, and that'll give you an idea if there is a Vasper system in your local area. So we're predominantly in North America right now, although there is a system in downtown London that is now publicly available. So anybody in the UK can go down to 1 Ropemaker Street and get a Vasper session there, and I highly recommend them to do so. But most of the systems are in North America, and from the website you can find out, if there's one close to you or not.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you, Sebastian. Okay, I have to move on to the final three
Okay.
questions. Some of these you may be biased towards, but what is your top tool or technology for reaching peak performance that you use? You may be biased a little bit.
uh, it might be redundant, but I'd say, when you really understand how fundamental your hormones are to every process in your body, the fact that on average we lose about 14% every 10 years past puberty. There's a saying in anti-aging that our hormones don't decline because we age because our hormones decline. And the way that you combat that trend, which most people would consider to just be normal aging, is through exercise, is through movement, and having a regular movement practice. And Vasper essentially just zeroes in on the science of rejuvenation through exercise and then is engineered to maximize that effect. So having Vasper be a part of your overall movement practice, I think is sharpening the sword in every area. GH is the most abundant hormone secreted by our pituitary gland, and it's released in response to intense exercise and deep sleep. So if you can be consistently optimizing your endocrine system and your endocrine profile through the right dose of exercise and the right type of movement, that is what's going to keep you healthy, happy, and effective in all your entrepreneurial pursuits.
Beautiful. Top trick for enhancing cognition?
Meditation.
Do you have a type of meditation?
I learned meditation through my yoga practice and through my study of Vedanta and other Vedic sciences and Ayurveda. And I'm not great at being consistent with it. I have a regular yoga practice, but when I stack the meditation practice with it, there's a lot more to be gained. There's a lot more results that I see from that. So, having the discipline to consistently meditate on a regular basis, I think moves the needle pretty much more than anything with respect to cognitive performance.
It's one of my top tricks as well. I love it. But I'll intermix anything from transcendental to 6 phases to headspace. It just depends on what I'm in the mood for given the day. So
yeah, just taking control of your breath and just mindfulness. I mean, it doesn't necessarily even need to be like a full blown sit in lotus position and meditate for half an hour. But if you can just incorporate mindfulness in everything that you do, in your movement practice, in your breathing, in your eating, in your diet choices, that's one of the most valuable perspectives and gifts you can give yourself.
yeah, I think combined with the Vasper, you may have just ended the obesity crisis in the United States with that.
We're working on exactly that. Yeah.
So last question from my end. What's your favorite book on peak performance?
The War of Art.
Okay, not to be confused with The Art of War. Who wrote The War of Art? I haven't actually read it, but
It's by a guy named Stephen Pressfield, I believe. And it is just one of the most impactful books that I've ever read in my entire life. And what it's so good at doing is connecting you with your true sense of purpose. What is the art that you were born to create in this life? Whether it be a company, whether you're a teacher, whatever it is that you are actually here to give and to create and to contribute in. And then what stands in the way of that is what's described as resistance. And it's basically winning that war against resistance. But what the book is so brilliant at doing is connecting you with that deeper sense of purpose. And I feel like when the why is clear for what you're doing every day and why you're waking up in the morning and why you're going to work, when that is clear within you, then you'll always be able to, find the how to get it done. But the vast majority of us are not truly connected to their reasons for getting up in the morning and are not living with this bright and clear sense of purpose. And with that in place, I think that is the only thing that's truly going to enable us to actualize our potential in this life.
this is great, Sebastian. I really appreciate you coming on the show and giving an overview of the machine. It's absolutely a fantastic workout. I'm trying to figure out a way to get one in Amsterdam, but we'll be in touch soon on that one. If people wanted to get in touch with you directly, how would you recommend them reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the best way would be through my email, which is Sebastian at Vasper.com, Sebastian at vasper.com. Would love to answer any questions and happy to provide more information with respect to the science, the applications, and so forth. And then for anybody that's interested in being a Vasper provider and practitioner, there's people who are being very successful in doing so and introducing it to their area.
Excellent. Thank you again for coming on the show, Sebastian. And to everyone listening, thank you. Have a great day. My amigos, Superhuman Nation, how did you enjoy that podcast? Do you like learning about technology? Because as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first real episode where I interviewed the creator of a biohacking technology. If you could give me some feedback, I'd love to hear it. podcast@decodingsuperhuman.com. And if you really liked it, please go over to wherever you listen to your podcasts and really just drop us a line. Give us a 5-star rating. Have an epic day.